Greetings, everyone, from a very smoky northern Colorado. Um, Unfortunately, it is wildfire season, and at this point, we currently have 6 active fires. Actually, there may be 7 active fires, with the closest that's about 12 miles away from our urban homestead. So, I do want to say that has impacted what we have been able to do within about the last 10 days because our air quality is such it's not conducive to being outdoors for extended periods of time. So therefore haven't really been able to keep up on weeding, regular garden maintenance, and even just some of the vegetable harvesting. So I just wanted to let you know that. However, we do have irrigation here on our homestead. So we have been able to keep our gardens going. So I'm very, very thankful for that. So with that said, we'll get started and I'll show you our first bed. What you are looking at here is one of my tomato beds, and they have just been going gangbusters, setting a lot of fruit. I believe I have 9 tomato plants in this bed. Most of them are San Marzanos and some Cherokee purple, some black crim. But here we'll just get in and show you some of the fruit. Now we have had exceptionally hot weather, so you can see there's some blossoms there that have just dried up. Even with irrigation, it's just too hot. They're not setting fruit, but there is quite a bit of green fruit. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to have a harvest before our first frosts and freezes come in for the season. And then back over here, we do have some lemon cucumbers. I also had some squash, but from the looks of it, we may have a pumpkin. And here we are looking at one of our lemon cucumbers. I have trellised. It has really begun to set fruit on. There's a lot of blossoms, a lot of fruit set, but this does quite well in our Zone 5 garden. And yes, I strongly suspect this is a pumpkin, even though this had been labeled a squash plant. I believe the label may have been mixed up, but this is definitely looking like a pumpkin. But you know what? Those things happen, so for us, it is merely a pleasant surprise. Here's another section of our garden that's right next to our tomato plants. Yes, and you can see the tomatoes there. But I have some butternut squash, and the butternut squash are now running out into our strawberry bed. And that's okay, because our strawberry season is over and we are getting some squash set. And if I come in over here, oh, there you go. See that? There's a butternut squash there, but from the looks of it, there's a marking, looks like a squirrel nibbled on the hull to see what was happening. So again, those things happen. No matter whether you live in the city or out in the country, there's always wildlife that gets into your garden. Here we are over at our straw bale garden, and I tell you folks, this has been one of the best producing spots of our garden this season. And you can see there's the bales there, but kale has been doing exceptionally well in that. Here on the end, there's a black cherry tomato. It has just been loaded with fruit, and we have been harvesting pretty regularly for about the last 10 to 14 days on that, and it is still setting fruit. And on the end here is a Romanesco squash, and we have been harvesting a lot of squash off of that. It's still blossoming, it is still setting fruit, but this is something else that I'll be sure to plant in next year's straw bale garden. And if we flip around, just more of our tomatoes. There's peppers in here, so you can see there's some fruit in through there. And oh, over here, this is one of our Anaheim peppers, but look at that. it has fruit that is ready to harvest. So definitely consider doing straw bale gardening. I know that I'll be adding this again to my list for next year. Folks, this has definitely been the most productive part of our garden. Well, it could be a tie between this and our straw bale garden, but this is my vegetable trug that I picked up, and I'm using that to grow this season a variety of cucumbers, and then in the center I have Swiss chard, and it is definitely cucumber season. We've been harvesting. If I come around here, ooh, look at that beauty. That will get picked today, and then there's a bunch of others in there. But yeah, in the interior you can see the Swiss chard, and between the cucumbers vining up and over, as well as this being underneath our grape pergola, it's providing some nice filtered shade for the Swiss chard, so it is not bolted at all, and the leaves and stems are still nice and sweet. And just to give you an update, there is our garden shed that we had worked hard on transforming. It took a lot of work, but we are both so happy with the results on that. And I have begun some reorganizing of the shed, as well as moving some stuff out that frankly didn't belong there. And you know what, guys, that's okay. That sort of things happens, but I am reclaiming the garden shed for myself, and it will only have gardening supplies in it. Here's another item I wanted to share with you. This is a piece of vintage wrought iron that I picked up the other day, because for me, part of the garden is having just some beautiful old pieces. I have its mate as well, and right now you can see they are hung on an old spike that had been driven into this fence, probably when it was put up many years ago by the original owner of this property. And for me, just seeing something like this, it just adds to the history, it adds to the charm of the garden. And then if I back up here, you can see it is right next to our grape arbor and our vegetable trug, but just adds a nice little bit of interest, because in our homestead it's not just about fruits, vegetables, herbs, and our chickens, but it's bringing some interest and whimsy into our garden just with pieces that we've added. And wanted to show you an update in our garden. Yes, this stump is the remains of one of our apple trees. This used to be our Golden Delicious, but we had more winds come through, and frankly we were only left with a couple of branches, so we decided to go ahead and take down this particular tree. We still haven't trimmed the trunk down to the ground, but we'll be doing that. And for the record, we have saved all of the wood. We're going to cure that, and we will use that in the smoker. And here we are near the middle of our backyard. I have a kidney-shaped bed in here, and why are you seeing me? These are our bicycle rim tomato cages. So tomatoes are doing well in that. They're setting fruit. Still nothing ripe yet in that area, but see by my shoulder here, looky there, that is actually celery, and we should have a really good celery harvest this year. They're full, they're lush, and if you haven't tried growing celery yourself, give it a shot. I tell you, it has so much more flavor compared to what you buy in the store. And again, because you're harvesting it fresh, as opposed to stuff that typically has to ship and then stored in storage before it actually makes it out to the grocery store shelves. So there's another idea. So add that to your list for your next garden season. Here's the newest addition to our urban homestead. Yesterday, Mr. Urban Overalls and myself We expanded this particular garden bed, so we pulled up sod. We planted, this is actually a Japanese maple right here. And then I got some rudbeckia in the ground, got it mulched, got it watered. I had added this horse trough about two weeks ago and filled it with a combination of potting soil and compost that I made, and I have it seeded with my fall garden. So there's an assortment of lettuce, spinach, there's some beets in there, there's some, let's see, I got some kohlrabi, and again, oh, looky here, little boogers. See, there's some little holes. I think I've had some mice come up and dig in the bed because looky here, this is brand new. So that's a little mouse hole that was dug. So I may have to set some traps. But again, that's part of homesteading, is dealing with rodents. Here is our raspberry bed. And I'm just coming in close so you can see, looky there. We have fruit that is setting. It's still quite green yet. They're very hard, so it's going to be at least, 10 to 14 days before we'll be able to harvest. But we will have a raspberry harvest this season. Folks, so that's it for our August garden tour here at Urban Overalls. We are in northern Colorado, USDA's hardiness zone 5B. I hope you find inspiration in our garden, as well as realizing that we also have trials and tribulations just like anyone else who homesteads, farms, or gardens. So with that said, I wish you all happy harvesting.